Good morning, traders, and a very happy Thursday out there to everyone. This is also going to be our last trading day of the month of November. Good to take into account our last trading day of November, that is. So we'll have that to take into account, and then also we got a few items on the board there. 8:30 we have our PCE and unemployment claims due out for the U.S., so we'll want to make note of that. See if we get any gyrations, and then a PMI at 9:45 and pending home sales at that morning inflection point, respectively, there at 10 o'clock Eastern. But first up will be our PCE and unemployment claims there, and then also looks as if we'll have some OPEC meetings going on today as well. So few items to be aware of: OPEC last day of the month, PCE, etc., etc. So all that to keep in mind there. But with that said, we got to come in here and take a look at our daily charts here on the S&Ps. We know yesterday we had quite the excursion and just ended up settling in as a doji bar. So we did leave a tail, and we know that tail came very close to the 97.50 that we have up above. Just fell 2 ticks shy, so we still have that as, reference point. It just came in the form of a tail. Outside of that, we can see our Globex range, keeping things trading inside of yesterday's action. So for now, if we were to open right here at 45.74, we would be opening in the middle of yesterday's pit session range. So we'll have that to monitor as well in case we're left with any gap as we come closer towards the opening, since we do have a morning data point. But for now, keeping things contained here on the daily chart. So we'll have the tail area to work with from yesterday's action, and then of course, as far as the downside zones go, we do have, the 45, 47, which we just barely held above yesterday. That's going to be the low there from our trading that was done on Tuesday there. So that's our daily chart for the ES, but also we have our intraday data, which is going to show that feeling of, how we came up with a little bit more detail. We came up just a little shy on getting up to the 97.50 previous swing high. Proceeded to mark ourselves back down towards the end of the day, and now in the overnight session we have one slightly higher low and just working very much well inside of yesterday's range. So we'll keep an eye. We do have that morning data point, so that could shake things up a notch. 45.80 half was a level that served us well yesterday, so it might be a little more of an intermediate zone that could be of value in this early morning session. So we'll watch those hourly charts coupled with the daily on the ES. But for now, obviously very neutral from yesterday's bar, so we'll keep an eye. For now, they have some mild movement to the upside off of their 8 a.m. reading, so see if they're able to maintain that at all. Moving on along, though, since we do have a couple bases to cover here, is that of the DAX. DAX keeping itself super well behaved. Our relative strength in the index future category. So we had it on the extended run. It's closed below the 5 SMA, and now overnight we've not only seen a test of the previous day's high, but a much higher high taking place in the DAX. So we have that up here on the 30-minute display of data, and for the time being, what we do not really see is any major signs of sell divergence taking place here in the DAX. We actually have more so of the slow line correcting itself back down without giving up much ground in the DAX, so almost more so like positive consolidation. We can recall from yesterday at the very tail end of the day, right, we were left with a little hint of loss of momentum here on the 30-minute data, already reverted back to the mean and now is working on almost single time framing up now on the 30 minutes. So DAX still showcasing some good strength as far as the index future category goes, so well above the previous day's high. We could keep that on the sheets there. That's 16,245 in case we soften up at all. But for now, like we said, no major divergences. Just continuing on their markup there as far as that DAX goes. And then we have our currency group, which the currencies, in particular here with the EC, a little more interesting overnight. If we once again come in here with the daily bars, we had our 1.09765 there from yesterday's action, which we did some pretty good trading around, but not quite enough to test below that 5 SMA there in the previous day's session. We did come awfully close, but overnight we did pick up some better high to low activity, so trading on the other side of 1.09670, which was our 5 SMA. So we essentially just kind of broke down from a little bit of a sideways action on the hourlies or the 120-minute data. So this 1.09750, since we broke down from it, is going to be a bit of a hurdle, as far as coming back up to that point. But what we can note is on the very tiny time frames here, the 15-minute data, this is already unfolding, but we were left with some buy divergences, a little loss of momentum, so we're coming back up and doing some work here inside of the Globex session there as far as the EC goes. So not too bad. They did have some nice selling pressure when they came back below the 5 SMA, and we're still holding well above, mind you, the big single print area, so that's not a major concern for the time being. And all we're doing for now, like we said on that 15 or 30-minute data, is coming back up, polishing off some of the damage that was done overnight. As far as points of interest up above, the 9750 is a ways up there, hourly moving average, which could serve us well in case this ends up forming more of a continuation pattern. $0.9590 would be the hourly moving average there for that of our euro currency. So good selling overnight. Pushed back below the 5 SMA. It's not on the extended run, but we did have a nice good upswing there with a couple consecutive low to high bars on the daily chart. So just taking its 2 days of high to low now, and we'll want to see this tail that they left overnight if they're able to maintain and hold themselves up above that zone at all. So that's there for our EC. When we come over to the gold now, we'll see a slight variation on the theme because the gold also had some mild testing down overnight, but not quite nearly as much as that of the EC, because for one, on the gold here, we're well above this 2049.45 SMA here, because the GC, on the other hand, is on the extended run, meaning that we've had consecutive closes on one side of our 5 SMA here. So gold maintaining itself, and all we see here is that all they did is come down and put in a very slightly lower low compared to yesterday's action. Of course, from our range expansion bar, we didn't spend a whole lot of time putting in development, so when we look at this hourly in just a moment, we'll be able to see some of that impulse activity that we left. But GC, for now, maintaining itself. We have that previous cycle high, which just for the spatial relations, as far as where we're trading currently compared to previous swing high, that 2039.7, doing very well job of keeping it above that, and that 5 SMA would come in front of that previous cycle high. So daily chart of the gold, that's where we stand. And now we have our intraday data, which is going to show our action in some slight more detail. So this was our previous day's low. We did make a slightly lower low. So if we look at it in this format, our consolidation off of our high, we're having that feeling of an A, B, C type of wave, with the B putting in a slightly lower high, the C putting in a slightly lower low, and then this little box zone is just to mark off that impulse that we had originally in the gold. So we only did partial filling into that yesterday, offered itself some footing or support, and it came back down, traded slightly lower overnight, and proceeding so far to hold. It's a caution zone. If we start to take out that overnight low, that would not be a very constructive look for the gold. But for now, they're doing an okay job of healing. They're still constructive, in which case, nice to have zones to keep an eye on. We'll have that 2064.2, which was our original high from the impulse bar originally there on the gold, which we traded around a lot yesterday. So still viewing 2064 as being a nice point of interest, or a reference level at least, in the case of the gold. So that'll be one to keep tabs on there. Then we have the crude. Crude, like I said, has some OPEC action going on today, but we also had the movement outside of the 3-bar yesterday in that of the crude. I'm just going to blow up these charts here for a moment. So not too bad of a look. We had our balancing act, so yesterday we had our low to high movement. And we were just looking, we had 78.09, just marking that off from the previous day's close. So we did test through that zone, quite a bit, almost closer towards the 80 handle. Coupled with, if I were to take this previous nice little visible spike that we had, 79.65, and we traded up to 79.60 so far, so very close to previous reaction high in the crude. But more importantly, we did see some good follow through from yesterday's bar when we came out low to high out of the balancing mode. So technically sound, if you would, as far as the crude goes on the dailies. On the intraday 120-minute hourly charts, same idea. It's really just going to be honing in there on that 79.65, which we just fell a notch short of getting on the other side early on in the day. Pretty well-defined regions on this crude. Of course, we had our good selling pressure, and we've been forming this bit of a range, but with slightly higher cycle lows on the crude. So we've been trying to open up, but haven't quite fully extended here. So between the 79.65 and the 77.78 gives us a nice little region for this crude to kind of play around with there or build out some additional range. So I do like that 120-minute coupled with the dailies there as far as the crude goes, but not too bad. A little OPEC action going on there today, so we could be subject to some additional gyrations, but as far as the dailies go, keeping things pretty well maintained. So that's there with the crude, and then last but not least, we have these bonds before we get into our morning data points here. So with the bonds, well, here we could do this for starters here, since we just had the yields open. Just to follow up from yesterday, we know that we were inside the gap area basis these 30 years. We did a pretty thorough job of filling a good portion of it. We came 3 ticks shy on fully getting down to 4.437. But as we can see, we're opening inside of our previous day's U.S. session range in the case of the yields. 4.467, so neutral, but we did do some work there yesterday filling in the blank. So when we come over here to the bond futures themselves, it's going to give us that same feeling. We have an inside range bar, even though we traded up a little further overnight. And once again, this is the March series on the bonds, so where we're trading up to wasn't quite front month at the time back then, so that's sometimes where those yields can serve us a little better as far as the dailies go. But we do have some nice intraday action. The intraday data, if you would. It's another one where it almost reminds us of like that euro currency yesterday, or the GC, where we had this feeling of a hint of loss of momentum or a little sell divergences, which has already played out though in the bonds, meaning we've already reverted back to the mean, and we're down 9 ticks trading inside of the previous day's range. So with these bonds, we do have 2 data points down here, 116.18. We've had a couple tests in that area, so I like that as a point of interest for the bonds. But for now, like we said, they're just holding essentially this 120-minute moving average there basis these 30s. So we have that going on there. And the yield display, this one here, you got to pull out a couple more data points, since those points, like we said, were from a little bit in the past. But we could still do that for good measures here, since we did just open up on them. So as far as where we're coming down to, no major divergences or anything, just kind of simple tests on previous gap zone fills there as far as the yields go. So with that said, without further ado here, we're going to get ourselves back here to our S&Ps. As we can see, there's some nice zones of interest here today, so this will be a nice one where we can see the market profile display with Damon here in just about another 30 minutes, just to give us an additional feel for, us taking a step back and looking at some of the structure that we had from the overnight session. So we'll have that to look forward to, and then in the meantime, just prior to that, we're going to get this unemployment claims figure and PCE out of the way, and we never quite know as to how the market will respond to it, so having our points of interest lined up ahead of time and seeing how the market, handles them will be of good value here for us. So we'll let that all settle in, and then we're going to be on our merry way here for this U.S. morning session.